and Personnel Committee to order. Let's do our minutes approval first, and then I will, as changes to the agenda, we'll figure out our scheduling for our many executive sessions. Can I get a motion on the minutes for April 12th? Rich John moves, Glenn Morey seconds. Any discussion or concerns? Okay, then, are we ready to vote? Mike?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, changes to the agenda. We have 2 executive sessions today. One we will have to have more or less during the meeting and then come back to the meeting because we will take action after the executive session. The other one will be at the end, and it will be an informational executive session. Both executive sessions are to discuss personnel matters involving named employees. And okay, those are the changes to the agenda. Martha?
So when are we doing the first one?
I think we'll plan to do the first one. Well, let's see. It relates to the resolution for the for human resources. So I guess we'll just go through. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I did. When Martha and you were done, there are 3 resolutions to be added to the agenda as well.
Right. Okay. So I think we can wait on during the meeting executive session till we get down to the HR presentations, Martha.
Okay, so that was almost at the end, but then the other one is.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Kathy, I guess we will rely on you then to add those resolutions.
There are 3 of them. Do you want me to
Sure.
reference the titles? So the first one I have is ID number 10126. And that title is Appropriation from Contingent Fund and Restoration of Position, Professional Development Coordinator, Department of Emergency Response. There was a revised one sent to you earlier today.
Right.
And then there's a second resolution, 10120, Appropriation from Contingent Fund, Communication and Public Outreach Resources. And the third resolution is ID 10119, Appropriation from Contingent Fund, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Resources.
Okay, so that's the Jedi one. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kathy. We don't need to vote to add those, do we?
You probably should. Yes.
Okay.
I would
Well,
recommend
then
it.
I will entertain a motion, and Rich, I bet that's the motion you're making.
Yes, I'd move those.
Add those 3 to the agenda. Martha seconds. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Mike?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
John? Or Rich?
Yes.
It's going to be a long meeting, people. My brain is just not ready for this. And I'm a yes, too. So Kathy, those are added to the agenda. And I guess we'll do the communications and Jedi one during the county administrator's portion of the meeting. And we can add the doer one after the county administrator. All right, then. I don't see any members of the public. Am I missing somebody?
No.
Okay, doesn't look like we have any comments from the public. So Bill Talbot, you're up.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. If you recall, last time we got together, by the way, Rinthia is on also. She's on vacation, but has actually called in so that she can participate and answer any questions if I can't. In the meantime,
great.
since I have the presentation, I'll try to run through this in the 20 minutes allotted. If you recall, the objective was to include the county in the budgeting process and planning process much earlier than the approval process. And so that is the intent of today, is to give you some background on that. So let me just open this up. All right, are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, we are. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, great. All right, so today's expectations. And again, I'm going to go through quickly. There's a lot of information. I'll send this to you afterwards. We were modifying it all through last week, and we'll continue to modify it again as we give the same presentation to Cortland because new things keep emerging. But it is detailed enough that it stands on its own. So don't get fearful about all the reading. I can run through it pretty quickly.
Okay.
Today's expectations, 21-22 is a year of transformation and what might be a paradigm shift. The objective of the college right now is to move any discretionary funding that we have towards enrollments and revenue growth. All the subjects that you hear about are all work in progress. So finalized anything, that's the whole idea of including you at the beginning or in the middle of it. So that you can have an influence on it. So by no means do we have everything locked up and ready to answer because it is all in process right now. But it's early enough so that you can share your preferences, your wants, your level of support you'd like to provide to us or guidance. Today's materials are covered at the highest level to give you some perspective of the environment and the things that we're taking into consideration. You are more than welcome, and we encourage, if you want to go into deeper dives on any of these subjects, we will do so. Now that we're into electronic transfer also, we can also do something creative where we create a presentation, record that presentation, and then give it to your board so you can watch it at different times. And then at that point, you can provide questions back. So we'll be very creative in the way that we're trying to share information to everybody. And some of this stuff can be scheduled all throughout the whole next year. It doesn't have to necessarily be all in the next 3 to 4 weeks, which is when we're trying to get the majority of the budget completed. As far as the budget planning process, what we're looking for ways to fund reviving, expanding, building programs or services, all again tied to revenue growth. And then also making sure that we're promoting the college much more so than we have in the past with creative means, whether that be through advertising or through relationships. And it's important to also know that you need different strategies, one for you, for our clients that we serve in your constituency, but also for the non-sponsoring counties, because as you see, and we go through this, they actually drive and generate the majority of our revenue for the college. So quick updates, 2019-20, our student revenues, when we compare ourselves to the other 30 community colleges, our student revenues make up 39%. The average for the state is 41%. New York State aid revenue, we're at 31%. The average is 27%. And the reason for that is because 50% of our FTEs are concurrent. Those are the students that are still in high school taking our courses. So just think about that. Half of all of our FTEs are delivered to students in high schools. And because of that,
Bill?
yes.
I'm sorry, Debbie, you probably can't see hands. Are slides supposed to be advancing?
Yes.
I'm only seeing the cover slide.
That's weird.
Are other people seeing?
Yeah, I thought Bill was just being exceedingly long-winded on his first slide.
Okay, let me unsave it and try to open it back up again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martha. And you're right, I can't see hands. So just
Okay.
if anybody's got a question, jump in.
All right, thanks. I hope you weren't already on slide 15 or something, 'cause
No, I was moving very quickly, but I'm trying to unshare it. and
Yeah, you have to unshare it and then put it in
Right.
presentation mode or whatever.
I unshared it for you there.
Oh,
Bill.
thank you.
Yeah, you should be able to share it again when you're ready.
Are you able to see it now?
Yes,
Financial
thank you.
updates? All right, let me just move back. Can you see it? Did you see it go backwards?
Yes,
Okay, so those were today's expectations.
right.
All right, so financial updates. We just went through the student revenue and the New York State aid revenue. And again, that goes back to the reason why we get so much from New York State as a percent is because half of all of our FTEs are concurrent students. So while we don't get any student revenue from those high school classes, we do get state money from it the next year. And so that inflates the amount that we get from New York State. Sponsored counties, we get 14% versus 10. Again, that's because of both the concurrent students and also because of all the residential students that we would bring up from New York City and fill our dorms with it. The sponsored counties, that's you guys, okay, you average about 15%. You're 15% versus the average for the state is 22%. So the fact that we're doing all these activities with out of county students keeps your amount much lower as a percent of the total count, revenue stream. As far as operating expenses, this is the amount we spend per FTE. It's just about $11,000. The average for the for the state is $13,000. We are the lowest of all the 30 community colleges for the cost per FTE. 2021, New York State Community Colleges, full-time equivalency changes. We're looking right now for last year is about, this year we about 14%. The average across New York State, the loss was about 12%, and nationally it's about 9%. And as far as this year, we're forecasting actually to be about $300,000 favorable to budget, and that's without CIRSA or ARP. And that's predominantly because of the couple $1 million worth of reductions that we've made in expenses. Some of those will come back next year when we go back to face-to-face. But also New York State, if you recall, came back and made their payments. And so that put us back in a favorable position to budget for this year. 2021. All right, so these are the operational expectations next year, that we're going to go back to face-to-face classes, that they're resuming. We're expecting that the enrollment reduction is going to be on core about a 10% reduction. Because current is still increasing, overall it will be a 1.6% reduction. But revenue is expected to further drop over last year's losses, which were in the realm of about $4 million. And expenses are expected to rise moderately. We're probably talking $700,000 when we saved over $2 million last year because we're going back to face-to-face. Also, some of the costs that were taken care of by the CARES Act are no longer taken care of by the CARES Act because that's exhausted. So as an example, when we do our testing, we're averaging somewhere about $60,000 a month to test our students for COVID. And then, of course, there's lots of other expenses that we're still incurring due to COVID. Federal grants, we've got two of them. One is CIRSA. That's worth $3.3 million to the institution, and ARP is worth $3.8 million to the institution. We do have clear understanding of what we can do with CIRSA. We can draw it down based on lost revenues. We've got more than $3.3 million in lost revenues, so it'll be very easy to draw that down at any point in time. ARP, we have no guidance on that one yet. So we don't know what the requirements are for that, access to that. For 21-22, again, we'll say it's a transformative year. So we're focusing on revenue, enrollments, student needs, and community needs. And then the last part, which we have had conversations and keeps getting pushed to the back burner, is the lack of funding, a funding solution for capital improvements, which if we don't start to do something, it will have a negative impact on enrollments and or require us to spend operational funds, which means we pull it away from programs and services. So those are the issues that we're assuming or trying to focus on as we're building this particular budget. There's one more thing that just came out today, which is, and we don't have enough to understand the ramifications or to what degree it will hold water and whether it's legal, but there's been some conversations about mandating vaccines for all students that return to school. So that would have a huge impact on us, especially thinking about all the part-time students and what their beliefs may or may not be. Enrollment focus. All right, so if we're focusing on enrollment, these are the kind of things that we're focusing on. We want to increase the lead conversions. What that means is that if somebody calls up or sends an email, we want to be able to convert those at a higher rate than we have in the past. So we brought in a third party, Swim Digital, and they are in the process of assessing our processes, practices, and systems. We recognize that we lack a CRM tool, a customer relationship management tool, which is common in the for-profit sector, and in many, probably half the colleges have this. It allows you to monitor and keep track of and communicate on a regular basis with potential students. And so we're in the process of putting that in place. Once you get an improvement in lead conversions, you need more leads. So we've got Sonar assessing our market presence, and we're looking at increasing our advertising, promotional spends, being much more targeted, being much more impactful, being able to track that through the CRM, and then also looking at the organizational needs that we have and that we need in order to generate a higher level of quality leads that will convert. From a budgeting standpoint, we're aligning expenses more with segment needs. So as requests are coming in for funds, we're asking exactly what segments they serve and what customer or student needs are being fulfilled with this expenditure. That gets everybody thinking about how do we do better at serving students. We continue with the assessing of our academic programs. I will tell you that the first pass as we go through this, and we're aligning what the academic benefits of each of the programs are with the costs, is that we're not seeing a lot of money wasted on programs. And in fact, we've been cutting back for so many years on the programs, we wonder whether we've cut too far back and that maybe we ought to be investing a little bit more in some of these programs, the existing programs that we have. So that work is continuing. And then we're evaluating the addition of new academic programs, especially in areas for part-time students, those seeking jobs. We're talking micro-credentials, we're talking workforce development, all those types of things. So those are the areas that we're focusing on for increasing enrollments. From a revenue standpoint, we look at both the program and the market opportunities. So here's some of the ideas that we're working through right now. Again, these are just ideas at this point in our conversations. Some are much farther along than others. But we can expand upon each of these. One is the workforce development program is pretty far along. And so we may wish to have a separate meeting on that one. I've included in an appendix an example of some of the organizational structure that would exist and how we've broken it out. But that one would require its own meeting to go through with all the opportunities and the targeting and timeframes it would take to do that. Expanding health and wellness support. We know our students need that, especially the wellness portion of it, the mental health portion of it, to get them to ensure that the anxiety around some of these things, resulting in them leaving the college before they're really ready. We have all these support services. We've heard, from high school students, the impact that this has had on their lives, people that were really good before, having a problem doing online type of programs. And so these programs have been expanded and are available online also, online students. Introducing new medical related micro programs. As you know, our nursing program is totally full. Understand we lose money on that particular program, but it's important to the community. And we do have funding, outside third-party funding for that, for some of that. And so the question becomes, if a student, once we get filled, if a student is looking for nursing, what do they do? And so we're looking at creating additional programs in the medical field that will allow them access and jobs in the medical field if they don't have the credentials for nursing or we're full. They're also working through another arrangement, which is a little premature, but working through another arrangements to see if we can't use those facilities for extending and expanding our nursing program into the evening. Creating an eSport athletic program, that gets a lot of students. We've looked at other colleges and there's some real benefits to that type of a program that attracts others to not only come here because they're interested in watching that sport firsthand, but they also tend to reside in the dorms, which again is a big revenue producer for us. Promoting existing paralegal program, highly successful program, but we don't probably do enough to promote it. So there's an opportunity there. Expanding and promoting the veterans program. We have all types of services here, but we've never marketed it. Lastly is revitalize the global and pandemic, the global program because of the pandemic shutdown. And so we were doing great things before COVID and now would like to restart that. The other option here is to promote and to attract non-sponsor enrollments. Our greatest revenue producer, again, are those that come from outside the sponsor counties. We get about $8,000 per FTE, and they supplement all the other programs that we have in the college. The athletic team accounts for almost 10% of our core enrollments, especially those outside of the local area. And the residential facilities is probably one of our greatest contributors because they're full-time students, they're here, and they are repeat returners. A little bit more on the other thing we need to do is we need to promote the fact that the New York State-based aid funding model is obsolete. Everything's done by an FTE level. As we're getting down into part-time students, the cost for part-time students is much higher than it is for full-time students because you have to register more of them. They take more services, et cetera. So it's just the wrong model for community college. Establishing new resources to apply for grants. NSF is a fantastic entity to pull in resources. We don't have grant writers. We've never spent time on that. We haven't put in for overheads that give us more money to the college, to operating a college from the grant. And so that's an area that we think that we should pursue and then actively support any federal sponsored grants. Example, there is interest for Biden to take some of his infrastructure money and give it directly to the community colleges. So we just finished an exercise where we took everything that we built into the master plan and plus a couple of more things and threw it together. It comes out to about $40 million, a little over $40 million that we require over the next 3 to 5 years to keep the facility going here in tip-top shape. To give you a multi-year outlook, all right, we need to look at the next 1 to 2 years to see what the real revenue benefits are from all the things that we're doing. We invest in these today. It's not like they're going to turn into revenue tomorrow. So it's going to take some time to build them, for people to recognize them, and for people to come back and we actually see the revenue portion of that. We're expecting to use those federal funds to carry us while we're generating all these new programs and responding to the change in the market. And so I do think that while it will take us 1 to 2 years to build these programs, it will probably take 2 to 3 years to actually recover from those losses. Sorry. It'll take us 2 or 3 years to recover from those losses and to get the revenue back that we once had just a year ago. We definitely need some seed money for some of these programs. Some of these programs are brand new. So not only are we going to have the natural strain on our expenses given the shortage of revenue, but we're looking to spend more in expenses for some of these new programs. And then of course the capital funds, we're going to need some type of multiple year plan for that. And if we don't, then it just pulls from operational expenses, which hurts us longer term on the revenue side. And so again, the CIRSA and the ARP grants are being used to help offset the revenue shortfalls that we've got. This is just and I'll send this out, but this gives you just kind of a quick view, and we've got full documents on this and we could do full presentations. But this is an example of the workforce and career departments that we're talking about. So we're looking at a workforce development, employer relations department, a career preparation and planning group, a student life programming group, and an academic group. And all of these folks are tied to both attracting students into a workforce development program, ensuring that all the resources are there to see them succeed, but also to help them to get jobs afterwards, which means these are all new organizational structures that we don't operate within on a day-to-day basis. We do have some activities that we perform, but nothing on a wide scale basis. And then just to remind you where we were, and we shared this last time we were all together, some of the enrollment shifts that are taking place. So if you go back to 2013-14, sponsorship FTEs were 39% of our total student base. And prior to the pandemic, it went up to 47%. The donut, which are all those counties that surround our two counties, Tompkins and Cortland, were at 16%, and they're at 19% prior to the pandemic, which means they really haven't changed much. And then of course, downstate, where the residential students come from, it was once 31%, and now it's 19%. So the revenue associated with these shifts have been dropping, even if the total FTEs weren't to have dropped. The reality is the revenue is dropping because we're not getting that extra revenue stream. That is the whole presentation, really quick and dirty. To give you some perspective, and like I said, I'll send this out so that you can absorb it. But the question becomes, how would you like to proceed in the next 2 to 3 weeks? And either asking more questions, which programs are you interested in hearing more about? And any question is totally valid, but I thought this is the best way to start this since we've never really done it this way. So I'll be quiet for a couple minutes.
Okay, why don't you stop sharing, Bill, so that I'm able to see everybody if they've got their hands up. And I will caution everyone, we've got a lot on the agenda today. So Bill has just dumped a lot of information in our laps, which I very much appreciate. And I appreciate your invitation for us to get involved early in the process. There's a lot of really good reasons for that, workforce development not being the least of them.
Right.
I do think this is something that it would be good if you would send us the PowerPoint. I want to get them out to the entire legislature. I think it might be beneficial if we had a meeting in the next 2 or 3 weeks with any interested legislators and you and Orinthia and anyone else from campus who might want to be involved, so we can delve into this stuff. So I've got Martha and Mike.
Thank you very much, Bill. This is certainly a better picture than I think we heard about 10 months ago. So appreciate that. Did I hear you say you had something about a 21-22 capital master plan? Is that, so would we be asked for a share for that in this upcoming budget?
Yes, but it can go through a separate cycle. It's not, the master plan is not required to go through the operating budget cycles. You could come back and say, look, we're willing to put in, I don't know, $1 million or 2 million or whatever it is over the next year, 2 years, 6 years, whatever it is. And that does not have to go through the operating budget plan that the college has to go through that we're talking about right now.
Okay, I mean, in terms of our decision making though, if we're looking at, say, you would want us to put in something for the next 5 years. Is that what you're saying? I'm making up 5 years. But
What I'm saying is we have completed a master plan. I can send that out in the next week or week and a half. And we would have I would suggest separate meetings on that to go through some of the details and the questions. And then that may go through a different funding cycle than what we're looking for right now that's required, where our board approves it, you approve it, it goes to SUNY to be approved, and they approve it in July. And then we can spend money beginning on September 1st. So that's an operating budget cycle. The master plan is a little bit different and can be out of cycle, but it would be helpful to get perspective. So I know if I'm overextending in that, if as an exaggeration, if both of you, the county said, we're just not doing it, then I'm going to have to hold cash to handle some of these more critical things that are safety issues and or operational issues that create a problem for the facilities or students.
Bill,
okay, it might
don't
be
we
different.
also, I'm sorry, Martha, Bill, don't we also need to submit to SUNY? Because if we're asking for matching dollars from them a
Yep.
couple of years in advance for them to get into the SUNY portion of what they would give to a capital expense as well.
That is true. I'm still working with them. I think I can submit what I think we need to do without anybody, and that therefore it gets on the list.
Mhm.
They have to approve it, and then it'd have to come back before I could spend it and get the other half of it. But
Okay, so what I was trying to get at, so it's all money to us. We understand the cycles can be all different, but so we're probably so you're saying that we're looking for in the next number of months to have to consider the capital budget, a capital plan, as well as the annual budget, the operating budget. Could I get an quick update on the dorms?
Martha, look, let's not get too much in the weeds on this because we're obviously going to have at least one more meeting on this. We're half an hour into this meeting. Okay. I mean, I appreciate your interest. I think we're all very interested, but need to move on.
I think, Deborah, what might be helpful is if everybody can think of questions. And
Sure.
collect
And we'll
it,
submit them to you.
then I know I can get information back to you prior to that meeting, and maybe I can answer your question. Henry, I think that worked out really well, right? When you were asking the question last year, okay, about fund balance, I'll ask another question. So I think that works.
Okay.
And that way
So,
there's
So I'll take Mike's question and then we're going to move on.
Deborah, I'll respect what you're asking for and then hold my questions. But I did have one. Bill, what's your status now?
I'm permanent.
I don't
No
think
longer an interim.
I don't think people knew that yet. So
Oh,
No,
I
I
hadn't-
didn't.
I hadn't seen an announcement, but I wanted to come from you and not from anybody else,
thank you very much.
other than Arinthia possibly.
Yes, it will come out this week. I will take time to write it while I am on the sunny shore. So I did have the okay to go ahead and do the appointment. It will go out this week to the campus and the community.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Mike.
you.
I didn't even think about it. So
Yeah, well,
it's been
I, for
18
one,
months or
am
19
very, very
months.
pleased to hear this, Bill.
Yep.
All right, so to sum up, I make sure I've got this right. If we have questions, we're to send them to Bill. Meanwhile, Bill, I think you'll be sending the PowerPoint to the entire legislature. I will send something out to indicate TC3's interest in having another meeting with all of the legislators for input into your budget process sometime in the next month. And we will try to find a time where everyone can do that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Enjoy your vacation, Arinthia.
you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so that brings us to the county administrator's section of the agenda. You have a report, Jason, and we have 3 resolutions.
Sure, I don't have much of a report. If you'd like, I can get right into the resolutions.
That's fine if that's what you'd like to do.
That'd be fine. Sure, thank you. In your agenda packet, there was a placeholder for 1 resolution, and as we got into it, we realized we needed 3 separate resolutions for 3 small requests. The requests were sent out in a memo that went out just following the agenda, and let me pull them up myself. These are 3 requests that have come up. And then one of the original questions that came up, I think it was from Martha, about whether or not we could use rollover. We can use rollover for this if we want to. We pitched it as a contingent request only because the last certified rollover we have is from 2019. Nonetheless, it's still certified, and we can still use that if that's an option of the legislature if they choose to do so. These 3 requests, and I'm just pulling them up right here. There we are. The first one, I'll kind of go through the memo if that's all right, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know Dominic and Deanna are here as well. And some of this has come up just through, as we've gone through COVID, and we've identified a better way of communicating with the public. We've seen interests from different department heads and different departments on how to communicate with the public. And we've seen, I would say, our shortcomings in terms of infrastructure and ability to communicate with the public. And that really spearheads kind of the first request, which is the Gov Delivery email platform. As you know, Dominic has been well engaged in educating the public and doing a lot of public education, communication. And what we've identified is that we don't really have a very good mechanism countywide to be able to communicate with large numbers of individuals. We have the E911, the Swift 911 system, which is really more for emergency communications, or usually quick bursts of information. We don't really have what we found an email. We did not have an email listserv or emailing system early on. We did get engaged with a group that we use now, but for 1 or 2 emails a month, 1 or 2 emails a week, it costs a certain amount of money. And if we were to expand it to all departments, which we think a good portion of departments would at least take advantage of it once a month, it doesn't become cost effective, and it only reaches a certain amount of subscribers. So I think the cost in here was $300 a month. Dom, correct me if I'm mistaken, but that's 1 email a month, not 1 email a week, correct? Or is it 1 email a week for?
Without an email a week, but
Okay,
it's variable both on the number of sends and the number of people. And I would also just add that tool we currently use is not designed for sort of government use, whereas the new one is designed more specifically for our industry.
So the intent here is that if we were to have, I would say, 5 or 6 departments that were to take advantage of it and do similar type of communications, which some have indicated they have, you're going to surpass what this request, this $18,000 request, is for. So Dominic worked to identify this group, and I believe this is through a group that we already use for other software. Is this the IQM2 group as well?
Yes.
The similar group. So we have familiarity with the entity that we would be working with, and want to, for at least an annual basis, on a trial basis, try to use it as a communication tool out across all departments to be able to take advantage of and be able to send more regular communications to residents. And the number of subscribers can increase significantly from where we are now. So,
Well, and I did hear from Amanda. She's on this call or meeting as well, but I did hear from Amanda this morning as chair of GO, and she mentioned that she thought that this would be an extremely valuable resource for the county and something that we have not had to date. So I don't see a problem with this. Why don't we get it moved in on the floor, and then we can discuss it. Rich moves it, and Glenn seconds it. And then initially, I'd just like to make I would like to suggest a an amendment to, instead of having it coming out of contingent fund in both the title of the resolution and on line 24, we'll just have it coming out of administration's rollover. Is that all right?
I think that's fine, Deborah.
I'd consider that friendly.
Okay, and Glenn considers it friendly as well.
Yes.
If Kathy or Rick are here, I think we might need some assistance from them in designating what the fund number is on line 24, because I have no idea. But meanwhile,
We could
while
always
we're-
bring it forward when it goes, if it goes to Geo as well as when it goes to Ledge, we can always make that change, just putting the right fund number in there.
Okay, great. So as long as we understand that's what we're voting on. So I have questions from Martha and Rich.
Thanks very much for explaining this, Dom and Jason. So you're saying, Dominic, you said right now you're only allowed to do one email a week anywhere in county government, is that what you said? On the existing system?
Yeah, so we're using MailChimp, which is primarily designed to sell products. So it's, in its email newsletter. So it's the formula through which they charge us, which I can't pretend to be an expert in, is variable. It's currently at around $300 a month just for the health department, based on about 27,000 subscribers and 1 or 2 email sends a week.
Okay.
That goes up pretty significantly each time we add a new subscriber count. So it started at $16. It's already at $300. But that's been primarily entirely pandemic response tool so far.
Okay, so this new system would be, any department could develop their email list of stakeholders and people who are interested, and they could send things out without limit, basically. I mean, as many times.
Without limit, up to 50,000 subscribers, which I think is probably, if we hit that, that would be an amazing number of people in our community to communicate with. So
That's a lot of public comment. Could I didn't get clarity on, is the 18,700, is that to set it up, or is that the annual cost once it's set up?
that would be the annual cost once it's set up.
So that's the setup is the same as the annual. Okay. All right. I guess I would also just add to line 21, if we could add on recommendation of the Government Operations Committee as well. That's not in here right now. I assume that's friendly. Kathy's thumbs up. So, all right. Thank you very much.
All right, so Rich and then Mike.
Yeah, Jason, I was going to say, I like the soft guitar accompaniment when you were asking us for money.
That was piano. That was a piano lesson upstairs right now.
Okay. Well, I heard some guitar too. I thought it helps, but I generally had a supportive mood when I heard the music.
I'm trying to pull out all the punches here at the end.
I didn't know you were such a romantic, Rich.
That's right. If you play music when you ask for money, it's just far more effective, I think. I think this is good. I would support it.
So will this be added to Target?
We're going to try this for a year trial and see how it goes. And then if so, I think there's, once you start rolling out with something like this, you start getting some systems in place, then we'll see demand, we'll see use, and then go from there. So it would be a 1-year trial, one time, and then if it is Target, it'll come back at a later budget.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Mike, did you have something?
Yes. Dominic, a couple of times health departments put out the robocalls, and they've been very effective. I've had a lot of people mention them to me. I even called my fax number. How much do they cost us? And I realize we wouldn't want to use them very often, but that's an effective method of communicating.
Jess will be the best to answer that particular question.
Yes, so SWIFT 911 comes out of Dewar's budget. And I believe the annual cost is, well, I might be off a little bit, around 25,000 a year.
For the whole program.
Correct.
Okay, so we don't know how much it costs for one. It's just that you can do as many as you want. Is that the idea?
Correct. Yeah, you can do as
Okay.
many as you want.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote on this as amended?
I think Henry has his.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Okay. Dominic, you said that the health department has about 30,000 emails. I assume that's from the registry list?
It's a mix of, there's a Google form that we instituted in January where people could sign up. Before we started the mail list, I was like, we're going to have vaccines and we're going to want to communicate with people. So we opened that up on the website. And then we pair that with the people who opt in from the registry. There's a little line that says, would you like to receive future updates from the health department? So it's both the registry and another form that we've used. You're on mute still, Henry.
Do you have a sense of how many other email groups other departments have?
You know, I think there's a handful, and I think they're used relatively intermittently. I think the planning department has had one in the past.
Cycling probably does.
Yep, and COFA has one as well. I'm trying to think of, I'm blanking on a few others, but for example, I have the legislature highlights. There's no current way other than someone emailing me for the public to sign up for those. And I know there's a demand for that specifically. This would be a tool where I'd be able to send that specific item to a larger portion of the public too.
Thanks.
Okay, now are we ready to vote? Martha,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that's unanimous. What's your next resolution, Jason?
I'll take on translations for 1,000, please. No.
If it were
Translation.
only 1,000, yeah.
Yeah. Translation for 8,500. The translation of reimagining public safety report. So as we move forward, so several things have happened over the course of the past year and a half. We've identified, similar to the way we communicated with email, we've identified translation services and the need for increased translation services. I think all of you may have seen, or if you haven't been, the vaccination site now has a lot of multiple languages. All the information we're putting out is in multiple languages. The registry was in multiple languages. And right now, Deanna and a team are working on the LEP, the Limited English Proficiency Plan, to update that, which will translate, no pun intended, into I think, a much more robust method of how you communicate out to the public, because you have several languages that are in high demand. And we see that with translation services that are used for county services, but we also are seeing a good response as we put out more information in different languages. Reimagining public safety is going to be something in the forefront of what we're going to be doing, at least in the immediate 12 to 24 months, and probably continually after there. And the main report and document that we use is not provided in any other languages, which is a key, I think, key foundation for this discussion as you move forward. It sets some basis for the work that's to be done. And this is an estimate, half an estimate actually, to do just the executive summary, because the document is 400 plus pages. Is that correct, Dom? This is an estimate to do the executive summary and resolutions passed in the 6 target languages of Spanish, traditional and simplified Chinese, Karen, Burmese, and Korean. And this would be able to put those documents on the website so that they're available and viewable in those 6 languages, which are the most commonly used languages other than English in our county. This would help us meet some of our LEP interests, but also I think as we start to move forward and put documents in multiple languages, this will be a more common thing as you start to move forward, particularly as we communicate as an organization out on a lot of different things. The LEP plan, Limited English Proficiency Plan, that's being revised, I think will help identify a structure and what that structure needs to look like internally in the future. But in terms of getting something, I think, a key piece of legislation that this legislature acted on and a report translated in the key languages will be important moving forward. So this is half of the cost, because the city will support the other half. Is that correct, Dom?
Yes, that's the plan.
So the question came out, why not 80, why did I put 8,500? Only because I rounded it up to make it easy, and sometimes translation costs, this is not an exact estimate because they're doing it per word or per estimated word per page, that type of thing. It's not exactly an exact thing. So I put a little flexibility in there, just a few $100 either way, so that if something's ran over, we would have the additional funding available.
Okay, can I get a motion and a second on this so we can discuss it further? Mike moves, Martha seconds. Okay, and then I would like to suggest a couple of amendments. Again, it's going to be coming out of administration rollover. And also on line 28, to address a concern that Martha raised in her emails, whereas this translation cost would be shared equally, I would just add the word equally with the city of Ithaca. Is that all right? Is that friendly?
That's friendly.
Martha?
Yeah, that still confuses at least me about whether this cost is 85 or actually 17,000. I thought maybe if it said, whereas the city of Ithaca will pay an equal amount toward the total cost. And I just
Total cost is just under 17,000. Our share is 85.
right. But just so it's more clear, if you say this translation cost would be shared, it sounds like you're not sure if it's 85 or 42.5 or 17. So I just thought it'd be a little clearer.
I don't really care. What's the consensus of the committee?
Deborah, I'd propose we say this translation cost would be equally shared with the city of Ithaca, with the county's share being $8,500.
That's
It's friendly.
sounds good and friendly. And do you have that, Kathy?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so that's what we're voting on, and it's coming out of administrative rollover. Is there something else, Martha?
Yeah, I just want to say, look, I support these resolutions, and my comments have been out of love, truly, and support for the initiatives, and really seeing where we can improve our services and how to, we sort of bootstrapped stuff during the pandemic, and now we're kind of looking at, okay, what do we need to make this sustainable and do it the right way? So these are resolutions. I appreciate the contribution from rollover, and happy to have this go forward.
Okay, people, tough love. Are we ready to vote? Okay, Martha,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so that's unanimous. Okay, you got one more, Jason.
Sure. Thank you. So the next two are together. It's a resource request to support our equity and our inclusion and diversity efforts. It's portioned out resources for Team Jedi. As you know, Deanna, since our onset here, has worked with Team Jedi to start to involve employee engagement, which is partnered with both WDIC and 30 some odd staff on equity issues throughout our organization, as well as this being a new position, getting its footing squared away, what identified resources, whether it's subscriptions such as DEI subscriptions or other support that may be needed. So this request is kind of coming forward as starting to understand some resources that they may need on a regular basis. But for now, this is one-time request to get us through, I think, to the end of the year. I think in my memo, I mentioned that both communications and our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, Communications Director and Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, are both fairly new positions. The context of what they're doing is substantially different from the past or new moving forward. So the budgets we created for them are base budgets. And we're starting to realize that there are some additional resources they need to do their job well and engage both with the employees and the community, depending on what tasks they're at. So this, again, I would say is a good use of rollover. It gives Deanna and the Jedi team some funding availability for anywhere from training materials to research materials to further their efforts as she begins to also develop the diversity strategic plan for the organization. So again, it's kind of a mixed match of just some needs on some basic funding levels, and then over the course of the next year or so, we'll evaluate what those needs may be longer term.
Okay, can I get a motion? Just a second. Martha moves. Glenn seconds. All right. And again, people, this is going to be changed so that they can roll over. So, Martha.
Thank you. So you sort of said this, Jason, but just to be clear, you're saying this goes through the end of the year, and I guess you would expect to do a budget request in our budget process, and this is probably a year's worth, really, or maybe really only half a year's worth.
Probably half a year's worth. I mean, initiatives will change. This has really been an assessment year, and we'll continue to assess, and then they'll be ready for the budget time as to what requests they'll put forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions? Are we ready to vote?
Can I just ask a quick question? Did you say this?
Sure, Kathy.
This was going to be rollover, or is it the contingent fund?
It's rollover.
It is rollover. Okay.
These three are all rollover.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Martha,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, people, now that we have shot our fiscal target high up in the sky, there's more to do.
That was no fiscal target there. That was all one
You're
time.
right. You're right. I'm
No
getting
fiscal
ahead of
target there.
myself. We haven't shot it yet.
You haven't shot it yet. All right.
All
Sorry.
righty.
And just so this will go to GO and then back to the legislature. Thank you for all
All
that. I
right.
appreciate
Thanks,
the support.
Jason.
Yep.
All right. Now we have a resolution establishing the Community Justice Center in collaboration between Tompkins County and the City of Ithaca, ID number 9999. I'm going to let Rich move that. All right. And can I get a second? Martha, discussion. Martha, you have a question?
Yeah, but Rich unmuted himself. So was he going to say something?
No, go ahead, Martha. I'll jump in.
It's a pregnant pause.
Okay.
This,
Okay.
obviously I've spoken my piece on this, but I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
So good. I noticed that this was the same resolution that was in the packet for public safety, but at public safety, there was a lot of conversation about how the plan gets developed. I couldn't remember and don't have any notes, and the minutes aren't out yet, about whether the resolution actually was revised in public safety. I sort of have a feeling that it was. Identifying like community groups and other stakeholders would be part of developing the plan.
I'm not sure the resolution was revised. It might have been, but mainly we're waiting for May 20th. The Public Safety Committee meeting is going to get more detailed plans from county administration on what this is going to look like, including we're probably going to have discussion about more refined job descriptions and what kind of advisory oversight the CJC would have between the city and the county and community groups.
Yes, that's correct, Rich. We'll have some more detail. I know Deanna's been working on a lot, and we've been having several meetings, just putting together more substance to what that rollout will look like.
Okay, because the conversation in public safety was about at this stage, we ought to be involving community members and NGOs and that sort of thing and legislators. So Rich, you think there was no revision to the resolution itself?
I don't remember that there was, but
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
so.
Okay.
there was
All
a
right.
lot of discussion about what more we needed to know, and that's coming.
Okay. All right. All right. That's good. Thank you.
Mike?
I guess not surprisingly, I'm not hearing a lot of great things about this in my district. This, in my view, is to help out the city as well as to help our sheriff's department some. How are these funds going to be administered? Are they going to be pooled together in a fund? And then if that's the case, who decides how they're spent? Or are they just going to wait for some kind of resolutions from both entities and then they each pay their part of the bill?
Go ahead, Jason.
No, it's
I would say that's part of what we need to work out, and we'll get a report on the 20th, that we're going to need an MOU or some similar agreement between the city and the county. I think we're in pretty good shape in terms of being able to run it if they're county employees and it's a county location office. And then it's just reimbursement from the city for their share. You know, and Mike, I guess I'd push back a little bit in that the city is looking at, they're saying, well, we pay city taxes and county taxes, so it feels like we're paying more than half. I don't even want to get near that argument. I think a 50-50 share is reasonable under the circumstances, but that's part of what's going to be in the agreement.
Well, the people that have village police departments could say the same thing. I'll point that out.
They can, yeah.
Well, it was my understanding, I thought, that these funds we're appropriating are to pay the salaries and expenses of the office. This does not cover any funds that we may have to spend for implementation of the redesigning public safety plan. Any expenditure like that would certainly come before the legislature and or the common council. Is that correct?
That
Yes,
is, yes.
Okay.
sorry, Rich.
Kathy, you had your hand up?
I did. I just wanted to say I looked at the minutes from the last public safety meeting and there was no changes made to the resolution. This is what the committee adopted.
Thanks. It's good to know exactly what we're voting on. Martha?
Thank you, Kathy. Remind me, there was conversation about this perhaps being located in the mental health building. Is that still what you're thinking?
It's one of the locations. I don't think we finalized anything yet, but I know it's one of the locations we're looking at.
Okay, and then back to the one-time versus ongoing question. So this is contingent fund. This is envisioned to go how long? Like to set this up initially and then?
I think the intent is that this would be a 2-year initiative. This is 1 year's worth of funding, but I think this is a two-year initiative that we're going to take this on. So I would expect a one-time request coming back to you for the following year.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, folks, are we ready to vote? Martha?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously. Okay, then we need a resolution authorizing a public hearing on proposed local law number of 2021, a local law overriding tax levy limit for 2022, ID number 10096. Can I get a motion on that? Martha moves. Mike seconds. My understanding is that we do this every year just in case. And that's about all there is to say about this. Does anybody else have any remarks? We ready to vote? Martha?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And then we have the resolution adopting the local law that we just voted for a public hearing. That's ID number 10095. Can I get a motion on that resolution? Martha moves. Who seconds? Let me turn off my phone. Rich seconds. Again, this is just something we do every year in case. Anybody have any comments on this? Martha?
Yeah, you want my vote or?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
I was thinking of commenting, asking if the governor gets impeached, never mind. Because this was his thing. I'm a yes.
Okay, Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that passes unanimously as well. Thank you, everybody. And now we will hear from Rick Snyder. Oh, Rich, you have a question?
I did, just for clarity. There were some possible resolutions regarding a couple other positions. Those have been put off. Is that correct?
No, they're just going to, oh dear, you're right. I skipped the doer resolution. Thank you for reminding me. Do you want to do that now and then we'll hear from Rick? Well, you're public safety, Rich, so.
I'm happy to put it on the floor.
All right, so that's been revised, I believe. And somewhere in this pile of revisions, I have the second revised version. Here it is. Appropriation from Contingent Fund and Restoration of Position, Professional Development Coordinator, Department of Emergency Response, and that's ID 10126. And I guess Rich is moving that. Can I get a second? Martha seconds. Okay. Lisa, did you want to speak to this?
Sure, I can introduce it, and we have Brian and Jess here from Doer who can speak about it. So this came to our attention at the end of April as a time-sensitive matter, which is why it's coming to you in this order. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but as you can see, it's restoring the position of professional development coordinator at Doer. And this was a position that was eliminated in the 2021 budget due to all of the reductions due to COVID. Our current 911 center manager was previously in this title, and he has since been assuming those duties, as well as doing preparing materials related to discovery requests, which they estimate is about a half-time position in and of itself. So a few things have then come to our attention. That is that this summer, they're anticipating that they have a number of dispatchers that are going to be out on maternity leave, a few dispatch supervisors that will be out on other disability-related leave, and that they anticipate 3 to 5 dispatchers will need to be hired over the next 12 months. And each hire takes a minimum amount of classroom time before being paired with a dispatcher for real-time hands-on learning. So, so that's why we were hoping to bring this forward as soon as possible to see about being able to fill this position, because there currently isn't the capacity to do this, as well as all of the other roles and responsibilities. At the same time, we've been made aware in the state budget that there is funding this year related to discovery reform, and it's anticipated that, that being the case, half of this position could be funded through those funds related to, in as much as this person is going to be working on discovery related requests, and will be receiving those funds over the next few months, and we would intend to apply them to half of this position. And the revisions and the suggestions that were made are correct that this would, for the 2021 fiscal year, it would only, we'd only be looking at the halftime funding, or the funding for half the year for 2021. But the position would need to be included in the target for the coming year. And I'm looking to Brian and Jess if I've left anything out, or if you have further questions, they can address them as well.
Yeah. I guess I'll say on this matter, I remember back last fall, we were doing the this year's budget presentation, and at the end of it, Martha commented that, well, I'm afraid you may have cut too deep. And just like I did many times when we were on the legislature together, I agreed with her, and I still do. We tried it. We tried to divvy up those duties. But in fairness to our communication center manager, he is currently doing 2.5 FTEs worth of work. And it's with us having to onboard some new dispatchers in the short term as well as the long term. That's no longer doable. This is one position that we do need back badly. And I don't know, Jess, if you've got anything to add.
I think between you and Lisa, you covered it.
Okay, thank you. Martha?
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for reminding me of myself. I do appreciate this, but I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
Do we think that the state money is going to be ongoing, or is it kind of one time?
As of right now, we're uncertain. The state money was available last year. They've come forward with it again this year, and we would hope they would continue to come forward with it, but we do not know. If it is, then this would be an ongoing, those funds we would see devoted to this in an ongoing way.
I would add that, as we do with any state funding that's guaranteed, it's never guaranteed.
Right. So that it sounds like it would explain, like, in the new resolution that came to us today, the second resolve that the 2022 fiscal target is that full amount of 95 for salary and fringe. And if you get revenue, you just apply it.
Yes. I think when we know more as you get into the future years, if it's going to be a consistent source, then that target can probably decrease over time.
Okay. I really appreciate that. I guess I would, as I wrote in my email, it's really hard to kind of decide on positions in the middle of the year. But this is a life and death department. Plus, with reimagining public safety, we're going to be asking more of doer and not less. So I fully support this. I am curious, Jason, do you have any, how many positions did we furloughed 47 people, right?
No, you furloughed over 100. You eliminated 47 FTEs.
Eliminated. All right. I guess at some point it'd be really helpful if we could get a list of those positions, and if there's any calculus you can make, any evaluation of which of those you think will need to be restored. I know that might be pretty sensitive,
sure,
but as I said, it's really hard to make these decisions on a one-off basis. So I'd appreciate that if you could put that together. And Deborah, did this get moved yet?
Yes, I believe it did.
If I can just say one thing, we can put together a list of positions. One thing to keep in mind too, when we talk about, this is part of the reason why I brought this up at the budget retreat in terms of budget restoration. One thing also to think about too is, as positions have been vacant or become vacant, and you've gone through some, I would call some pretty significant changes in operations over the past year and a half, it's a good time to evaluate that if you do restore things, they may be restored in a different way or a different fashion. So it may not be a one-for-one, and I think that's important to understand as you go through this, but we can definitely put together the list of FTEs that were eliminated or not funded in the 21 budget.
Yeah, I guess I would ask Jason on your to-do list before you leave. That would
Sure.
really be very helpful. So,
Yep.
because you have the biggest picture of all of it.
Yeah, we can do that. Putting that list together isn't a hard thing. I think we have it because I'm sure we asked the same question when we were going through it. But I put that out there because, you know, it's not a one-for-one of this is what it was and this is how it should be again. It's really a question of, all right, this is what it was. We've done things really differently in a lot of different departments. All right, well, does it need to be this way again, or can it be differently, or is this the right position, so on and so forth. So we can definitely put together a list of positions for you.
And as we've lived with the reduced number of staff, the stress points become obvious.
I do.
Yeah, and the stress points should grab our attention and should be addressed first.
And this is one of them. Okay. Thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Rich?
Yeah, I agree with Martha that we need to be careful about going too fast and making sure the public understands where we're going. But this seems pretty compelling, I think. Even without music, I thought Lisa and Jessica and Brian made a good argument.
Can't compete with piano lessons.
The
remote piano lessons, nonetheless.
But again, just in terms of pathway, is this going to go to public safety before it goes to the legislature still, or is it going to the legislature first?
I think it goes to your goes to your May.
Or are you
20th.
going to have a special meeting for this?
If you go to your May 20th, you can go to your June 1st ledge meeting. I think that was the intent. Correct, Lisa?
Okay, good. So we'll talk about it there too. Thanks.
Yeah, ordinarily I would much prefer to have a position addition go through the program department. I understand the urgency. In this case, we could well have a special BCP meeting before the June 1st ledge meeting to approve this after BCP reviews it, but I want to spare Kathy.
Yeah, I'm fine with going backwards on this one.
Yeah, I guess I'm okay with going backwards on this one, especially because we've got 4 of the 5 members of public safety here. And if anybody's got anything they want to say about why we shouldn't be doing this, I'm sure they would speak up. So I'm willing to put this to a vote, but honestly, I'm telling anybody on staff who's listening, I don't like to appropriate the money before the program committee evaluates the need for the position. So in the future, let's try to avoid this. Henry?
Yes. And Brian, in terms of the amount of discovery, has discovery picked up again in terms of the criminal cases? Has it from last year, I assume, when it dropped?
Yeah, and we're actually trying to get a good handle on it. If you recall, discovery actually just got going in January before COVID. Right. And then since then, there's been some shutdown and pick back up of the courts themselves. So it's been a little hard to gauge, but we think we pretty much have a handle on that now. And it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 hours, give or take, of staff time is our best estimate as to what what we need to do here at Dewar for discovery. So in the meantime, we've tried some creative ways to try to take some of that responsibility off from the communication center manager. And the supervisor that was assisting him is one of them that we just spoke of that's going to be out for a while, coming right up. But I do appreciate you taking this out of order. One of the things it's going to allow us to do is it is a civil service position that needs to be advertised. And, if we're going to get somebody in the door, hopefully around July 1, then we need to start doing some of that stuff. So we appreciate it. And normally we would start with public safety. But so thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome, Brian. Okay, let's vote, people. Martha?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So go post your position, Brian.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. All right, now Rick.
Good afternoon. Good to see
Hi.
you. Real briefly today, I only have a couple things I wanted just to bring to your attention. No staggering spreadsheets or big numbers, but I want to share with you how we're doing on filling up positions here for the vacancies. First, I'd bring up the purchasing manager fixed asset accountant position. We have 4 applicants so far after being out there for nearly a month. And that position closes on our civil service system on Monday, May 17th. So we're still taking applications for that. On the payroll specialist position, we have wrapped up interviews with that. We had 6 applicants, and we will be selecting and making an offer before the end of this week, probably in the next day or two. So that's being wrapped up fairly quickly. I thought I'd remind you or bring to your attention that the previous payroll specialist was that one position that worked 70% of their time for the health insurance consortium, along with me doing the books of the consortium. And because that position has been vacated, the health insurance consortium with Elin and the audit and finance committee of the consortium decided to move ahead with hiring a position that is similar to the duties that our person did while they were here working in our finance department. So they have since hired a full-time finance manager that will take over those duties of what was being done by our previous payroll specialist. And so that means when we hire our payroll specialist in this next coming week, we have that person to work totally and devotedly towards the finance operation of Tompkins County. And that is such a big plus. And we have been sorely needed some extra hands on payroll, especially with the complicated payroll conversion packages that we've been doing. And so this comes at a great time. It fills a great need. The health insurance consortium is doing well with the new finance manager. Her name is Terry Apolovich. And Drew and I have been working and training her over the last month or so and bringing her up to speed. So she's already pretty much attained that level of responsibility in doing what our person, the payroll specialist, had been doing for the consortium. My goal is to train her into doing a lot of the things that Drew and I still do for the health insurance consortium. So over the next 60 days or so, we'll be training her on investment journal entries and how to do the quarterly state reports, things of that nature. Our goal, of course, is to be almost nearly out of the health insurance consortium everyday business by the end of the year. So I'll still be the treasurer of the consortium. I'll still have fundamental control over the financial statements and how they're presented and reviewing the annual report. But as far as the day-to-day operations of the health insurance consortium, we soon will have divested ourselves of that. And that will free up a great number of labor hours for both a payroll specialist position, Drew, my deputy, and myself. If you're interested in seeing our health insurance consortium audited financial report, that was completed a good number of weeks ago and was presented to their audit and finance committee. We ended the year with an $864,000 net surplus or net income, which is very good because you'll have to remember the consortium gave all the municipalities a 1-month December premium holiday. That cost the health insurance consortium $4.4 million in 1 year to give them that generous benefit. But we still ended the year, even with that, with an $864,000 surplus or net income. The year before that, we had a $4.4 million net income for that. So you can see how much that net income has gone down from 1 year to the next. But the audited financial report is complete. It looks very similar to a county financial report. I never really have brought that to this committee or any committee for presentation purposes, but I wanted you to know that that report in itself and going through that audit takes us about 2 months. And so the month of March and April, my staff and I have been working hard on doing that health insurance consortium closing, year-end jurat, and the year-end financial report. If any of you would like to have a copy of the financial report, please let me know and I'll send it to you. And that way you can review it in its entirety. And that's pretty much all I have for today.
Well, thanks, Rick. You were a real ray of sunshine today. Let's see, we have questions from Martha and Mike.
Yeah, that's really great news. New York State really ought to get off its stuff and let other municipalities do this. When I presume that your department was getting some revenue supporting the salaries and the like for the payroll specialists to do that work, correct?
Up until this year, and we are still being paid by the consortium, but ever since I've been here, we have always budgeted about $65,000 in income from the health insurance consortium to do their books. With this past year, Jason thought we needed to come out from underneath this slowly but surely. So we budgeted no revenue this year, knowing that this would be a huge transition year. And we didn't know whether it would take us 3 months or 18 months, but it's actually sooner rather than longer. And so we budgeted no income, but we still are charging that same approximately $65,000 a year until we no longer are committing ourselves to serving them on a monthly or quarterly basis. So, and that was based on 70% of the payroll specialist time and 10% of the deputy's time.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to give up the revenue. I think it's important that you sort of have your staff concentrate on our work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Rick, is there an executive summary on that audit report? I'd like to see that. I don't know if I need the whole report, but I think that would be useful. Maybe we'd all like that. I don't know.
I'm waiting for the movie.
Starring whom?
Or on Netflix.
Yeah, they buy everything. All right.
I'll send the executive report to this committee so you all have it at your disposal for nighttime reading.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, committee chair report. I don't have anything special to report. I do think that Martha has something that she wants to talk about relating to the Community Housing Development Fund. Is it, Martha?
Oh, right. Yes. The Community Housing Development Fund is on a 6-year cycle where we, the 3 partners have an MOU, and we're coming up. This is the 6th year of the second MOU. In November, this MOU runs out. The parties have worked out the language for a new MOU for the next 6 years. And the Megan McDonald suggested that this committee get at least an update, but the actual resolution to approve the MOU will go through Housing and Economic Development. But it was suggested that this committee should hear that the premise is that the county will continue to fund the annual contribution of $100,000, so $600,000 over the coming 6 years. We have been using HUD program income funds to pay for that. It is expected, it might, those loans, that program income comes from mortgages that we have provided over the previous 25 or so years, and those are coming, like, sort of being finished up. So it's very possible that by the end of the 6 years, we will have run, or before the end of the 6 years, we'll have run out of that program income money. So we don't have anything definite. That's impossible to predict right now. But we just Megan suggested that we just give everybody here an update to say that by the end of the 6 years, we may be dipping into county resources, local revenue, general fund money. And that, of course, was made possible by the law that we had passed, the home rule bill that we had passed a couple of years ago, allowing Tompkins County to put local money into affordable housing. So this is just a heads up that not only it's an agreement that we'll be asking the legislature to approve, but there's also a funding commitment. And that was the reason to bring it here. Does that cover?
Megan had asked me if there ought to be a resolution brought to BCP. And since the shortfall is speculative, if it occurs at all, and we don't know how much it might be, Megan sent a memo that said that worst case scenario was about $160,000. But that would be in the way out years. I just figured if we were informed, that would be enough rather than having a resolution. So does anybody have any concerns or questions?
There'll be a full discussion at HED, of course.
Okay, good. So next we'll hear from Henry.
Yes, WDIC met.
Oh my God.
On April 28th. Yes, we actually met. We had the Ithaca Asian American Association do a proclamation, and they talked about Asian American Heritage Month and what the various activities they're doing. And then we had a no discussion regarding our committee goals, which were approved. And then we had a very exciting report by the Chief Diversity Officer. And she it was basically the same presentation she did for the legislature, but again, very in detail, many questions about her ongoing work and what she plans on doing. And then we had updates from the Office of Human Rights, Office of Human Resources, Team Jedi, and Department of Social Services. And really I know Reverend Ken said that the number of complaints have gone up at the Office of Human Rights recently. He also talked about his housing. There's a fair housing seminar that got changed. I think it's on the 12th of March. And Team Jedi also talked about how they had a post-Floyd verdict meeting in which they just basically kept the mic open and talked extensively about the trial and what's going on in America post-trial. Team Jedi that was Team Jedi. Then Social Services also just talked about the housing issue and everything else. It was a full meeting. It was nice to have a full meeting after 2 months of waiting.
Okay, thanks, Henry. I'm glad we had a meeting too.
Yeah.
Any questions for Henry? Okay. This might be a good time for us to jump off and jump onto the the first executive session. Greg, I'm sure will have that up and running for us. So we will be taking action after the executive session. So I guess I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter relating to a specified individual.
Is this, excuse me, Deborah, is this the one that we have to go out and come back in?
Yes, sir, because this is the one that we will be taking action after.
So we come back on the same one we were on before, or is there a new email?
No, I think we come back on the same one we were on before.
I sent you a link for the executive session, so you're gonna leave this meeting and go into executive session using the link I sent by email a couple hours ago, and then you'll return to this meeting.
Okay.
The same Zoom link for this meeting.
Deborah, we have the Tompkins County Correction Officers Association. Did you want to do that first?
No, we can do both of the HR resolutions together. Okay.
Okay, so we totally leave this one.
Right.
And go back to the same link later. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, guys. It's really complicated. See you soon.
Should I be asked to attend or leave?
No, that's okay. Rich, did you have a question? You're silenced.
Sorry, don't we have to vote to go into executive session?
Oh, yeah, I guess we do.
I'll second.
Sorry about that. All in favor? That's everybody. Okay. Bye. Rich.
This feels really cyberspacey. It's like,
Okay, this is fun, huh? All right, so we're back at our regular session. We're missing Mike Lane.
I've resumed the recording.
Okay, great. We'll just give Mike a minute to jump back on.
do we need a motion to go back into regular session?
No.
Okay.
Well, I guess we could take up the resolution recognizing the Tompkins County Correction Officers Association as bargaining agent, ID number 10103. Would somebody like to move that? Glenn moves it, Martha seconds. Okay. Ruby, is there anything we need to know about this, or is this just standard stuff?
This is standard. The organization has provided the organizational documents that were needed to recognize them as official negotiation unit of the corrections officers. Over 90% of the members have agreed to support the organizations with their dues. So this is really a recognition of the association as the bargaining agent for the corrections officers. And I'm
Okay,
not sure if
thank you.
Jason wanted to add anything to that.
Sure. They have not done this in the past. In the past, they hired 2 separate unions, which they subsequently fired. And now they're creating their own union so they can do their own negotiation. They couldn't collect dues in the past because they weren't a recognized bargaining unit.
Okay. I've got Mike and Rich.
Jason or Ruby, is this the equivalent of a PBA?
It's the equivalent of a collective, yeah, basically. It's their own collective bargaining unit.
Okay. I would just point out that with the PBAs, we had some members of the legislature that were saying that they weren't, that they were criticizing PBAs with respect to the reimagining police initiatives. And I just didn't think that was fair at the time that some of the legislators were saying that. And I don't think it's fair to categorize that of any collective bargaining unit. So I intend to support this, but I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Mike. Rich?
I would just add that in approaching, all things being connected, that in approaching reimagining public safety, it's in a holistic way. It's important that we have a bargaining unit. We can go to the corrections officers have been working outside of a contract for several years. It really makes sense to have an organization we can negotiate with in the hopes of reaching an agreement and settling it. So I support this wholeheartedly. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Okay, are we ready to vote? Martha?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that's unanimous. And now we can move on to resolution, creation of position, employee benefits assistant and 2021 target increase. Department of Human Resources, ID number 10104. And just for clarification, we are voting on the second revision version of this that came to you via email. So can I get a motion? Martha moves, Glenn seconds. Okay, Ruby, take it away.
Okay, this resolution is calling for the creation of a much needed position, employee benefits assistant in the Department of Human Resources. It will be a 40-hour full-time position whose responsibility is really to assist in carrying out our benefits and leaves program. This is a much needed position for the department, and I simply ask that the committee supports it. If there are any questions I can answer.
Okay, good. We can, Martha?
Yeah, I just do want to put on the record that, you know, through an email conversation, I expressed a concern about creating a new position in the middle of the year. It's something that in Jason's first year, he kind of was pretty allergic to in another department. So I really understand the need for this and understand it's urgent. And I appreciate that, you know, we want to provide excellent service to our employees and make sure that they get the support they need and benefits. And so I support this, but I just want to make sure it's, you know, it's not a normal thing really to create a position mid-year. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that it's not the normal way we do things, but we're not exactly living in normal times. And I think generally we as a committee are going to be faced with requests like this going forward. And we really need to understand that if we want to be a county that delivers for its employees and its residents, we're going to have to make sure that our staff is large enough and has the resources that they need to create those deliverables. I'm not all that averse to creating a position when there's a need for it that is clear. So Jason, you wanted to say something and then Mike has a question?
No, I agree with everything you just said, Deborah. The flexibility piece is important. I just add that the reference you're making, Martha, was when the sheriff's office wanted a school resource officer in the middle of the year. And I think the school resource officer had a much larger policy discussion piece than this. So just from a full disclosure, there was a little bit more to it than just a budget creation piece. You know, generally we don't on a regular basis. You know, there are always going to be situations, and I think this is one of them for sure. As is the one we discussed just recently. And I guess they all kind of, maybe it happens in threes, I don't know, but it just happened to come at the same time. But I do think they're critical for continuing some core pieces of service.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, Mike.
We can't forget process. We need to try to bring this along through process. And one of the processes is that we create most of our positions during the budget examination in the fall. I support this today, and I understand the critical need for it. But just because we've gone through a year of COVID, we don't start throwing the baby of the processes out with the bathwater here. Process is what holds us together, and we need to think about those on a regular basis.
Martha?
Yeah, I mean, we voted for a particular target that actually was quite constrained. And so I just, another department head watching this might have just, you know, as great a case to make. Another department head might feel like, well, wait a minute, you know, is it first come, first serve? That's the issue here. And I'm not saying, and I've moved it. I've moved this resolution. I support it. It's a caution. It's just a caution to say that flexibility and responding, like with the doer position as well, understanding, listening to our staff, and being willing to take up special cases is important. But if we didn't make a point as well that this is not what we expect to happen, then that suggests to every department head that they should just hurry up and come up with a really great case for their restoration. So that's all I'm saying. I'm convinced. I appreciate this. I'm glad Ruby's brought this to us and that Jason supports it. It's just a process point. as to what Mike said, basically.
Shona?
My guess is that if any department head or person working for the county has reached out for assistance with benefits, they would fully support this position. I mean, this is essential for our government to continue to work and essential for our employees to be happy. I mean, there are certainly some positions which might not be as essential, but this is definitely an essential position in my mind. So I'm glad we're moving this forward.
Rich?
Yeah, I support the resolution, but I also recognize Martha's concern is real. And I believe as a committee, we just have to be prepared to say no and have people line up with the ordinary budget cycle. We have to exercise some discipline here, but this does seem pretty urgent. And particularly with our director of HR coming in and doing her evaluation of the department and the needs, there is some argument to be made that this is a different circumstance for that reason too. Thanks.
Well, thanks, everybody. Listen, the point here is balance. We don't sacrifice function for process, and we don't sacrifice process willy-nilly unless there's an urgent, demonstrable need. And yes, we can say no just as easily as we say yes. So, I'm not declaring, a jubilee year for restaffing. I'm just saying, we got to be balanced, and we have to approach each thing on a case-by-case basis. So are we ready to vote on this one? Martha?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that covers our extended agenda today. And now we can go into executive session to discuss personnel matters involving specific named employees. Can I get a motion for that purpose? Martha moves. Anybody wants to second that? Glenn? Okay, so I don't think there's anybody on this call that shouldn't be here except for maybe Kathy. And Kathy, I will do my best to remember. Can you transfer the control of this call to me?
Yeah, you need to vote on that motion, and then I need to stop all the recordings as well.
Okay, great. But okay, so Martha?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Okay. And Kathy, I will do my best to remember to send you an email and tell you what time we actually end.
Okay, thank you. I'll stop the recordings.
Okay, thanks.